So thank you, everybody, for coming. Everybody for coming to coming out tonight to talk about headaches and neck pain and learn a little bit more about how some of these things work. A couple of things that I want to note, and it'll sound like I'm reading. I just want to be just a little bit more official with this part, just so that we're aware. Kind of being here and not in the office. The information that we're going to talk about this evening isn't intended or implied to be a substitute for any kind of professional medical advice, any diagnosis, or any treatment. Any of the content is for general information purposes only. So make sure never disregard professional medical advice. If what I'm saying now conflicts with what your doctor's saying, talk with your doctor about it. Definitely don't delay seeking medical treatment because of anything that I might say this evening. If you have specific questions, really specific questions, happy to take a look and answer any questions that anybody has. After we're done, talk for about 15 or 20 minutes, and then just kind of open up for questions. So feel free to ask any and all that you like. Enjoy your coffee or tea or roll. Make sure that the lid's on nice and tight. Things get hairy, and I don't treat burn wounds. All right. So I don't know. So we'll start here. I don't know if anybody's aware, but about 2 years ago, around May, a lot of people, for one reason or another, started working from their homes. And things kind of shifted, a little bit from the way that they were. Not only that, they had been going a certain direction for a while, but folks kind of found themselves working from home on a computer more. Things were virtual, and that's exactly what we're doing, right now in a certain sense. A lot of these things were kind of sped up, and so I wanted to tell you about the patient that I'll tell you about today is sort of like a Huckleberry Finn type character, right? It's not based on one individual, and the name is probably changed. So 2 or 3 people kind of crash together to kind of form the same person. But and so that's my Mark Twain introduction. I decided to go that route today, minus the deep drawl. So the person that I can recall, working with, one of the first folks when we started with Origin, was somebody who had been working home for the better part of a year, and over a period of time started experiencing numbness and tingling down really the right arm. And a lot of pain in the neck, starting to get some headaches, and a lot of different things kind of going on at once. Had never really had experienced any of that stuff really before, much at all. And so we did a few things. One of the first things is make sure that everything is safe, right? So generally accepting that everything was safe and okay to sort of proceed. We wanted to look at the neck. Looking at the neck, really because the spinal cord is sort of the root of everything. All the motor stuff in the entire body. Everything kind of comes off of the grand highway that is the spinal cord, that the vertebra and the cervical spine wrap around and protect, going to very predictable spaces in the arms and things like that. So that's what we did. We looked at a lot of things. First thing that we do, really the first thing that we do with anybody that comes into the office is we listen. What do you feel? Tell me about the pain. What does it feel like? If I wanted to kind of feel exactly what you're feeling right now. And so, words like numbness, words like burning, words like tingling. Tell me about nerve pain. And that's kind of what was going on, down into the arm. But it was sort of a deep ache, just an achy feeling, just a crampy feeling in the neck and really in the head. And the headache was sort of at the end of the day, a lot of times, and so those were the words that they used. And so we explored that. We want to kind of take things apart piece by piece, not dissimilar from, when I was a kid, taking apart the lawnmower, piece by piece, making sure that I didn't lose like a bolt or something, and, cost my dad a new lawnmower. Never happened before. So that's what we did. And there's a couple ways to approach solving a problem. I mean, you can solve it from the top down, you can solve it from the bottom up. I find sometimes that when I look at the middle and try and go one way or the other, it just gets confusing. So starting at one end and progressing to the other is generally helpful. So looking at a little bit at the anatomy, I decided to go kind of top down because I felt like with some of the burning stuff, I wanted to look at the neck first. When I'm hearing nerve stuff, I'm thinking, a little bit closer to the body than where that sensation is. So looked at the head, kind of examined and felt the muscles and things like that attached to the head. One of the important things that I think a lot of us sort of glance over is that below my skin is not my skull, right? So there's muscles that attach, that kind of attach to the skull, anchor on the skull with tendons and all the other stuff that all the other muscles in your body, anchor to a bone with. Ligaments. And then stretch over it, covering the entire skull, kind of coming to the front here to sort of raise your eyebrows. At the same time, on the sides, pretty powerful muscles that you can feel if you just kind of clench your jaw right now and just, chew. A little bit higher. There you go. Okay. Yeah. Right by your temple. It's temporalis muscle. Is one of the big ones. Really strong, jaw muscle. And a lot of these things, there's different reasons that those muscles will get tight and kind of cause, some of the headaches. For this individual, you can kind of push on it and recreate exactly that headache. I didn't have a headache when I walked in. I do now. That also never happens. I'm also a bad liar. So kind of pushing on these things and recreating, some of the headaches that they were feeling. We could tell that it was more of a tension type headache. And we'll go through some of that stuff in just a little bit. One of the, now is as good a time as any. So, tension headaches or stress headaches, are generally mediated by the muscles. Tension in the muscles, very taut, spasmed. You can generally kind of feel or push on a spot. And, that's kind of what it feels like, or a little bit more intense than what it feels like. Those are generally of a muscular origin. At the same time, you can have problems from degeneration of discs or arthritis in the spine that contribute to some of the muscle guarding and things like that put a little bit more pressure through the muscles, force through the muscles, and create that tension. Same thing, tension headaches. Posture will do the same thing. A lot of times what we'll see, kind of turning to the side, see kind of folks with that kind of forward head, rounded shoulders. Anymore, we talked about people working from home. This person that we're talking about here, working from home and setting up their computer in their office and stuff. But we also talked about these things kind of having been happening for a long period of time. Text neck is a real thing. Just kind of more and more time on the computer. My eyesight gets a little bit worse over the year before I get a new prescription. So I get a little bit closer. Screen gets nice and big, and I can see again. But for decades, really decades now, we've been becoming a little bit more of an academic and much less of an agrarian society, where we're up and over and all over the place on a day-to-day basis. Much more of our stuff is takes place right here, right? And so this is kind of how we end up being for much of the day doing our work. And so sustaining that posture over a long period of time, creates those same muscle tensions and spasms and things like that, and doesn't let us get out of them very easily without, effort, right? And so, these are some of the things that we were seeing. Same time, just to kind of hit the rest of some of the headache stuff. We have the posture, we have some of the tension, we have the degenerative changes in the neck, contributing to some of the stress and tension. But also, we talked about the strong muscles here as you're chewing, can kind of be associated with some TMJ, problems too. So headaches and TMJ often we'll see them together. One of the things that I'm not terribly familiar with, but occasionally become familiar with involuntarily, is caffeine withdrawal. If your body, is as addicted to caffeine as mine, and you don't have it for the day, you kind of start to notice a little bit of that haziness, that fuzziness, and that that it's a different feeling, a different sensation, but it ends up kind of being like a headache kind of behind my eyeballs, right? There's also, what they call a true migraine. It's an organic source. It's not muscles, it's not bones, it's not joints, it's not any of that stuff. It's a true migraine that comes from inside the brain. That is not something that, that I'm going to be able to deal with effectively at all. So just wanted to make sure that we made that distinction as well before moving on from the head. So we talked about, kind of the pain with the stuff attaching to the head. Right below the head, you have your neck. Neck bone connects to the head bone. Right? It's one of my favorite schoolhouse rocks. So the neck, though, an important point is that your neck can be separated, really effectively separated into two different portions, I suppose. So you have your cervical, your thoracic, and your lumbar spines, right? Your neck, your upper back, your lower back, all that. Well, you can actually separate your neck pretty effectively into your upper neck and your lower neck, upper cervical and lower cervical, because of really based on the shape of the bones and the joints that are there, very consistently, like I said, across everybody. So the head, and then the top two cervical vertebrae, C1, C2. Being the upper cervical, C3, and everything below being the lower cervical. Again, based on shape and function. And so, one of the things that we often see is sort of that, again, that forward head, but you can kind of see here that my lower neck is sort of flexing, bending forward, while my upper neck has to come up to bring my eyes into the horizon. So you can see the upper part of my neck extending. So they kind of behave in opposites. But when they do that, the muscles that attach to the upper neck, the head, C1 and C2, get nice and tight. They stay nice and tight. So you have that sustained text neck or laptop neck, whatever you want to call it, getting closer and closer and closer to the screen because it's down low and, it's only a 13-inch screen, so my eyes just don't see that well. Sustained over time, those muscles become tight and create that sort of tension headache, right? And that's exactly what we're seeing. We're seeing the postural changes. We were seeing being able to kind of push on different structures in the neck and kind of feel just the different levels kind of spasming, and just not feeling, super great. Working a little bit lower, we could feel some of the lower pieces, some of the lower segments of the neck, 4, 5, 6, even down to 7, with little spasms there. Now, they weren't moving very well when I kind of pushed and tried to make them wiggle. They should wiggle a little bit, and they should wiggle evenly on either side, and they should wiggle evenly as their neighbors wiggle. Okay, and wiggle is definitely the scientific word. That's definitely what I write in all of my notes. Yeah. But honestly, they should wiggle a little bit. obviously in the right direction and the right amount, again, equal to their neighbors and their counterparts on the left and right. And so some of those just weren't. In fact, some of them were just locked down almost completely. They didn't want to move. And those were the ones where, that were associated with the areas where the person was feeling that pain kind of radiate down to, the specific nerve tracts that they were tracing with their finger. They were tracing very specific nerves, with their finger, which is always fascinating. If you look at some of the anatomy pictures, you can kind of see these nerves right there. Without fail, folks will come in and trace those exact nerve paths. I think you're familiar with that.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of where we went. So we went from the head to the upper cervical part, looked at the lower cervical, and kind of, traced it back. Okay, and there's an issue with the, it was C5, not moving very well and creating, pinching on the nerve, sort of like standing on a garden hose, creating sort of a referred pain pattern down the arm in a very specific, very predictable pattern every single time. We could reproduce it pretty easily. At the same time, the upper part of the neck, which is, depending on where you read, responsible for up to 50% of the movement in your neck. That really wasn't moving very much at all because of how locked down the muscles had it. And so all of that stuff created lots of tension up into the head, plenty of headaches, that got worse over the day as they were working. Their head kind of crept ever forward, throughout the day. Those muscles only got tighter. And so it made sense that as those muscles got tighter throughout the day, they just kind of created more and more tension. So that's great, Dave. You're great at finding problems. My mom always said the same thing. No, she said creating problems. That's right. Never mind. So what can I do? And that's kind of the big question. And I want to make sure that we talk about a couple of those things that we can do here tonight. If you find yourself with neck pain, just fatigue in your neck, or just a headache, right? A couple of things that are safe, often effective. It's not a blanket, everything or nothing. Either this works or nothing works. But just something that's safe to try. Usually, often effective to try, and that's effective at kind of controlling some of these types of things, and generally isn't going to interrupt anything else that you're doing. It cause any kind of instability, any kind of really serious or emergent problems. These are exercises that I give folks every single day. So really, the first one, we're going to talk about three different stretches with a variation or two on a couple of them. So the first one really addresses some of the stress and tension type headaches. So less of a stretch and more of an activity, right? So breathing and just taking a walk sometimes. So getting away from the sort of the academic portion of stuff, and whether it's academic or just kind of reading for pleasure, or looking at other people's Facebook stuff and Facebook stalking relatives and whatnot. Getting away from those things, being outside, the weather's sort of starting to turn a little bit, being outside, being up, and kind of getting back to those big movement roots, right? Letting your whole body move, and when you walk, being tall, not being stiff, but being able to be tall. I mean, my body often wants to kind of crouch down itself, but thinking about just kind of being tall and taking just a short walk up and down the street. If you have to do it a couple times a day, great. But also during that time, practicing some breathing. And you can do that during your walking period, or even sitting at your desk, right? So sitting at your desk, taking some time out, a period of time out, during the day, every hour, every couple of hours or so, just to kind of sit back, sit tall, and just kind of take a deep breath. And doing that a few times, you'll be surprised at, kind of how you feel your shoulders kind of go from, sort of that really high, high guard type place, and kind of you're relaxing down and back, kind of melting into your chair a little bit, just feeling generally better, right? I mean, most bosses generally frown on, liquor during the day, which also may have a similar effect. I don't know anything about that. So, I'm just kidding. That I'm kidding about. But breathing and relaxation activities are good. I don't prescribe liquor. Stretches. Another one that we often do is the chin tuck. So it's a stretch specifically for the upper cervical muscles, to kind of stretch those muscles that attach, really up here in this part of the spine, at the top, just under the base of the skull, right? And have their effects all the way through and over. So a chin tuck is not just, sort of, and I keep turning to the side so that, folks can kind of see, or you can see too. It's not just looking down. So if you're just looking down, you're going to often feel a lot of tension just at the base of your neck, where that kind of bone that sticks out is, that you can feel back there. If you feel tension there, you're probably not doing it quite right. So, a chin tuck is not looking down. It's coming straight back. So if you think about your jaw as sort of train tracks, you want to go straight back on it so that you're talking like a frog when you're all the way back. Really good. That's perfect. Get a double chin too. I try not to point that out. But yes, that's all. But the difficulty is that if that's the only measure, if the double chin's the only measure, looking down will do that exact same thing. And I can still, talk pretty well like that. I'm not quite talking like a frog. I'm going straight back. Right? Showing off my sweet frog voice. So it's a chin tuck. You got breathing, some chin tucks. And then the last one is stretching these big shoulder muscles out. Right? One of the exercises that I like, surprise, surprise, involves sitting. So you're sitting in a chair, and you can do this in just about any chair. Really, except the chairs that you're sitting in there, because they have big cushions. Yeah. Really, all you need is something to kind of hold on to and grab. And I have a lot of trust here. There could be some bubble gum. Who knows? I'm not going to tell you if I stick my finger. So all you're going to do is you're going to grab onto whatever chair that you're sitting in. If you're really hard up, you can kind of sit on your hand. It's not quite as good. I feel that more in my forearm, to be honest with you. But it'll work in the absence of anything else. You can kind of hold your elbow down too, I suppose. But the way that I like it, and the way that I find works best for for me and the folks that I kind of give it to, kind of holding on to whatever chair that you have. At some point in the day, you're not going to be sitting on a big comfy couch, right? Grabbing on there and leaning to the side, just kind of leaning to the side, and you should start to sort of feel that sort of pull. It's a gentle pull. Stop when it's, small to medium, right? One of the things that I like to tell people, I started to tell people a little bit more recently, is I want, it's good to stretch like you barbecue, just low and slow, right? We're trying to deform muscles, not dissimilar from barbecuing, right? You get there, it's usually a tough cut of meat that you want to add just a little bit of heat to over time that will kind of break it down and make it taste delicious. Stretch the same way, though not for 6 hours. And don't put barbecue sauce on yourself. It's gross. So you're just going to hold on to the chair, lean away till you just feel a small stretch, okay? And then what I want you to do is kind of play with your neck position. Looking down, looking up at the ceiling, kind of feel where you feel the most stretch. So it's more of a rotation. So you're away, kind of rotating up like you're trying to look over your shoulder there, or you're trying to put your nose into your armpit here, but not forcefully. There you go. And you should feel, just a small size stretch, and you'll feel like yeah, this one feels a whole lot tighter and harder to do than this one, or this one is just feels, like I'm really getting at the muscle and I can't really move very well this way. Focus on the one that's more difficult. Like I said, low and slow, hold it for a minute or so. But a small stretch held for a minute should feel pretty good when you're done. And you should notice that you're able to move your neck a little bit better than you had been able to before. And so those are really the three big ones that I like to give folks, especially on their first day. As this person anyway, with with that type of symptom presentation, with the postural stuff kind of coming into play, with sort of upper and lower cervical, being involved, as well as even sometimes referred pain going down the arm. That is what I have for you. And right now, we've been going for a little over 20 minutes or so. So what kind of questions do we have? What kind of questions can I answer?
I thought it was kind of interesting. You said muscles all over your head. Sometimes I'll get a muscle back there and just get touching. I can feel it up here.
Mm-hmm.
So I looked it up on the computer to see. I'm sure enough there were muscles up there. I thought, okay, I wondered what was going on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a wild thing. A lot of folks just don't realize that, it's not like hair and then skin and then just straight up skull. Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, there's muscles and tendons and ligaments all over your covering that skull.
When I work on my big computer, my desktop, mm-hmm. I've never ever been able to get it just the right height.
Yeah.
Because over bifocals, I have just the opposite. I'm not doing this.
Yeah.
I'm doing this.
Yeah.
And after about an hour of designing something, it's like, it doesn't want to move.
So
I need to just get a pair of readers.
Yeah.
Or our old eye doctor, actually, for a plumber, he actually built him a pair of glasses that were upside down.
Oh, interesting.
So because plumber's always working under things, so he put the reader on top and the distance on the bottom.
That's a good idea.
Creative thinking.
Yeah.
That'll solve a problem.
We used to have a great eye doctor. He retired.
The interesting piece, though, is this isn't an abnormal thing with folks, especially with folks who have bifocals. Just because you have that, and then you have almost a hyperextension of the upper cervical. So it's exaggerated, because if I was just to flex my neck, I'd be here, bringing my eyes up to horizontal. But then to get that bifocal in, you're just kind of going up a little bit more. Just doesn't feel good doing that.
Yeah.
Do some of those chin tucks.
Where you have a lot of people that are having problems now, because when you were working at work, you were at a desk with a computer on the desk. Now at home, you're putting it on your lap. You're putting it all places it wasn't meant to be.
Right.
And so they're really straining their bodies a lot.
Yeah.
Working on your dining room table, which is not a laptop on your dining room table is not a good thing.
On a laptop, well, just a laptop itself. It wasn't meant to be, a constant device, but it's so portable and so convenient that it's all.
People have so many problems like that.
Yeah. Yep. That's all that I use. But you either have your arms really up high in the monitor at a good height, or you have your arms at the right height, or you're kind of low.
For cell phones, and a cell phone up, I couldn't do that if I had to. I just drop the phone and break it. There's no way I can do this.
So I use my ears. Anybody else? Questions?
What would you say to people who are like, oh, can I manage this myself, or should I go see a physical therapist?
Yeah, what I would say is try some of these exercises. Try them a few times a day, 2 or 3 times a day, for a few days, 5, 7 days. If things get better, great, really good. Continue. If things don't get better, they stay the same, might need to have some things checked out. If they get worse, definitely have them checked out. But if you can manage things on your own, that's really the ultimate goal of what I do is to teach folks how to manage things on their own. This may just be the weak link in your chain. The way that your desk is set up, might just, you're doing the best job that you possibly can. But, there's a few things mechanically that, just kind of happen. And they have to be managed longer term. So I want to teach you the skills to manage them long term. But if they're not getting better, come in and see somebody sooner rather than later, so that you're not having to see somebody for 6 months. Because that's time out of your day. I enjoy it, but it's time out of your day.
It's interesting how like a stiff neck like that, sometimes I don't know, just sitting on our lows.
Yeah,
Cushions don't get me in the right place.
yeah, our Losi does this to me, and then I get the burn from here down to about there. And if I spend too long on my laptop, because I use a TrackMan, this hand, these two fingers fall asleep, and then it's like, what do you mean right click?
Doesn't work at the moment.
No, not at this moment. Because the furniture can make a big difference.
Oh yeah, yep.
I was just gonna mention, usually when I think of posture, like sitting at the desk, computer, I always think the back, rounding of that versus just at the neck. Will that cause different issues, you think?
No.
Or could it like make it worse on the neck in a way, or no?
Sometimes, but generally it's better. So, one of the things that I'll have folks do, and that's really, it's not usually the place that I start, only because, I'll start where the pain is and then eventually sort of work away. But we eventually get there, if we're addressing a workstation, we eventually do address, seating mechanics, and we'll talk about this in, future workshops, but just to kind of give you that preview, seats, if you put like a marble or a ball on any seat, and that one's a good example, it's just going to slopes back. Seats are designed, no matter what kind of seat, to kind of hold you in and make you feel comfy and cozy and things like that. Get in your car as you're leaving. They're supposed to feel comfortable. They've changed the bench seat to a cockpit seat for a reason. It feels more comfortable. But what that does is it kind of turns your back into, just a big seat. You can kind of see where my neck is, right? And so it kind of has that effect. One of the first things that I'll do is actually put something on the back of the seat to sort of tilt that pelvis forward. And you can kind of see, I can't fight it. As I tilt the pelvis forward, my entire back kind of sits up a little bit straighter. The curve in my low back returns the appropriate amount of curve, and my upper back returns. My neck is a little bit, straighter too. I'm just sitting taller. It's hard to sit, with good posture here, but then just like, that feels strained to try and, maintain a good curve in my low back, strong through the core there, but then forcing my head out. That's hard to do.
Oh,
So it's part of kind of from the bottom up.